Hello everyone and welcome to Talk About a Tuesday. It's May 31st, 2022, and I am your host, Tosca De Matteo, founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting. I'm so excited to have you on today. We're going to talk about being back from burnout with my guest, Jen Pestikas, who is a podcast host of Brave Women at Work, also a marketing executive, and just a wonderful human being. And so I see her coming on here now. So real quick before I bring you on, Jen, I just want to say for those of you who are new to the platform, I do this to bring diverse perspectives and experiences to the table to help you in your professional growth, your personal growth, healing, and leadership development. So I know today is going to be jam-packed with lots of really great content. So let's see if we can bring Jen on now. And I see there's maybe popped out of the room here. Let's see what I can do. Okay, let's see if we can bring Jen on. All right, here we go. Hope this works. Oh, it says okay. It says declined. All right, let's try this again.
How are you?
Here we are. There you go. I'm good. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Of course, and thanks for
really
your understanding. I'm learning new technology for everyone. So thank
Well, that's what it's all about. Yeah, my pleasure. A lot of, my guests are new to doing IG Lives on this platform, and it's one of the things that I think is kind of fun because sometimes people realize, oh, I really enjoy this. So again, I just want to say, first of all, you had me on your podcast, Brave Women at Work. I just so appreciate you opening the door to that. It was a wonderful conversation. And as I've gotten to know you a bit more in the prep of this, I'm just so thrilled to have you on to talk about something that I think so many people need to learn more about and hear more about, and also just appreciate you sharing your experiences in service of helping others. And I know you're a busy gal, so thanks again
thank you
for
for having
taking
me.
the
I
time
really
to come on
appreciate it.
here.
And if I can help one person that's on, whether they see it live or later, I'm on board.
Oh, I love it. That's why I do this, because that's what this is all about, is kind of being in service of other people. And yeah, so I think the first question that I ask is always just to share a bit about yourself, about kind of the experiences that kind of made you who you are,
Sure.
however far you want to go with your upbringing, and just to
Yeah,
give the audience a sense of
so
who
again,
is
thanks to
Jen.
everyone for having me and for listening. So Jen Pestikas, and been around this planet now. We're at 4 decades plus, and from the Chicagoland area. Grew up, both of my parents, loving, awesome, supportive parents. Both of them were in education. So I kind of feel like what I'm doing now with coaching and with podcasting and, this conversation is, I feel in a way I'm teaching or providing education and passing it forward. So I always thought I missed my calling by not being a high school teacher. And my mom was like, no, Jen, no, that's not your personality. So I'm actually the only factoid. I'm the only non-teacher in my family. So my mom was a teacher for 37 years. My brother's 15 years. My sister-in-law is 15, 16 years. My aunt, my father was a principal. So deep roots in education, very, very deep. But this is the way that I get to do it. And so let's see some other stuff about me. Been in the corporate world for over 20 years, continue to be in the corporate world in financial services. And started my career in the investment world, and now kind of branched off into marketing and some other facets. And then still live in the Chicagoland area, although I did do some travel stints, lived overseas for a year as an undergrad. I was a French and Spanish double major, everyone. So this just shows you can go anywhere. You don't have to start the same place. So I was a double foreign language degree, lived in France with my dear friend Pam, who is just lovely. And and an interesting fact about her is that we grew up 40 minutes away from each other, but met 4,000 miles away. So I think when things are meant to be, it's meant to be. And then, of course, my family, I have my lovely husband, John. We've been married, let me think about this, we're going on 18 years this fall, and two lovely daughters that I mean, I'm doing this podcast also for them, you know, because I have women and want to raise brave and strong women. Charlotte, who is 10, and Olivia, who is turning 4 this very week. So that's me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for that overview. It's funny because I've known my husband, it'll be 18 years in August, and we're celebrating 12 marriage this month. So yeah, that's quite a journey, quite a background, and I'm just curious, like how yeah, it sounds like you were not demonized for
Yeah.
not going down the
I asked
education
my mom,
path. Is
actually. I was,
that
you know,
that
we
was
talk about burnout, we talk about imposter syndrome, doubts, things like that. I have a really strong imposter
mm,
syndrome and I have really strong doubt inside me. So for
mm,
anyone that knows the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 1, which is also the reformer and also is, what is it called? The perfectionist. So I have a super strong, you
mm.
know, inner critic. But I asked my mom, hey, I think I missed the boat in teaching. And based on my personality, she's like, you don't know, you just would not do well with high school kids. You're more adept you'd be better at teaching college or adult students. And she's right. She's absolutely right. So here I am.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's good that she kind of
Yeah.
had a sense of what was going to be for you and what wasn't. Um, and actually, because we're talking about burnout, I think um, I'd love to hear a little bit about like work ethic, like what is that like what are some of your roots around around yeah, that. Like what is it like what is like a good work ethic, and like what were expectations that you had, whether it was in school or that you set for yourself or that others had
Yeah.
for you like
So
from
I'm
an
going to give a
early
shout out.
age?
I didn't plan for her to be on, but my sister-in-law is in here. So I'm going to say hi, Brooke, and that I love you, and that she agrees. She's also a teacher, so I have to give her a shout out. So in terms of work ethic, I'll also riff off of something that she says to me all the time. She's like, "What happened to you and your brother? Like something happened along the were really instilled with like a crazy work ethic to the point I think, and I'm not trying to be disparaging to my parents and my upbringing, but a little to the point of unhealthy. So when we on weekends, for example, so let's say that you know most teenagers or kids like they want to sleep in, they want to be lazy, like that just was not allowed in my family. So my dad would like literally pull us out of bed. So it's like, no, 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 you're not sleeping in. So we had to do projects on the weekends. We were always super busy. And just something was instilled like that. You had to work really hard for it. And one of the things that I'm unlearning is that maybe work shouldn't have to be so hard. You know, like maybe I can have amazing results and still have joy and fun in it. I don't have to be working and hustling so hard for my worth. So I would say the work ethic came in young kids, and then a blessing for us is also the fact that we started a business as a family, and my dad has a choice. He says, "Hey, you guys can work at McDonald's. No offense to McDonald's. You can work in fast food, or we can start a business." And so we as a family started a business, and we had like 13 and we threw a little Toro mower at the back of a Chevy Caprice 1977 mint green, and you know, one of the things lovely is that my brother, I parted off from it because let's be honest, who wants to cut grass for that long? I mean, I loved it for a few years, but then after that my brother really took it on, and I know he did a big down deposit on his home that he lives in to this day with that. One point they, you know, he was cutting and our family was cutting like 200 plus lawns a week and had multiple crews. So the idea of
Mm,
independence, the idea of really strong work ethic was bred way deep
mm,
in the genetics, way deep.
mm. Yeah, and I can imagine that there's probably even history with your parents'
Yeah.
parents and like where did that come from? And yeah, and I think, some of this is there's so much generational, experiences and aspects of this, even when I think about like, grandparents and such that went through the Great Depression, and how that kind of mindset leads to, different belief patterns and even work ethics in terms of like scarcity mindset and all that stuff. So I'm so glad you bring this up, because we could, there's a lot of depth in that we could explore. And I just bring that up for the audience that's watching to say, like, yeah, where does some of this stuff come from, so that we can better understand it, unpack it, and see where our behavior patterns come from, and what's serving us then and what's serving us now, if it ever did serve us. So, appreciate you sharing. And so maybe I'd love to just, I know you're really passionate about helping people to prevent experiencing burnout like you did. So I'd love to kind of jump and talk about, give me a lay of the land about like where you were in your career, what was going on, and how did you know you hit burnout, and like what
So
was your
again,
story around
always
that?
had like a deep need to hustle for my work. And, no one was telling me I had to go to levels of my career. I just had this like fire inside of me to keep going higher and higher and higher. And, some people go and they become a CEO or a CFO or whatever. And I just like have this need to get higher and higher. But what I've learned through this process is like, for who? Like, who is this for? Is it for me, or is it for like me to show or to prove that I'm like enough, I'm good enough, I'm worthy, that I've arrived, all that kind of stuff. So that's still stuff I'm unpacking right now. But in terms of where I was in my career, so I was a vice president or a senior vice president. And still to this day, I take on pretty significant projects in my work. But that year was no exception, other than it was like more intense. So let's just say that the project was very, very intense I was on. But then on top of that, my husband was very ill with a chronic illness. And then on top of that, I had just gone off I just got out of IVF the year before, was lucky enough to get pregnant, and then had what I made. I mean, I'm not going to beat myself up over, but I mean, I made it a stressful pregnancy because I was so afraid of another pregnancy loss. So everyone kept telling me, like, ease into the rainbow, baby, like ease into it. And I'm like gripping the side of the table, going like, I will not ease. Like, so like just the idea of being in control of my body and trying to make sure that I gave birth to this like beautiful being, which I did. And she's fabulous and joyful and a blast. And her name is Olivia. And so I gave birth to her, but then my husband got really sick at the same time, and his dad has had a lot of illnesses. He's had a couple strokes, a couple heart attacks, but I'm not trying to just like be flip about it. I mean, he's had quite a few health issues, and just that pressure, honestly, there's no denying it. So like when I hit burnout, it was like I hit hard. And so it was just all these symptoms starting one at a time. It was rosacea, it was digestive issues, it was allergy issues, histamine issues. Then after that, I started having insomnia. Then I had anxiety. Then I started having depression. Then the one that set me way over the edge was like, I had severe hair loss. And it wasn't like, like you have a baby, and it was 18 months post baby. So like, I know that your hair changes after a baby. But after and I even talked to my sister-in-law about it, and she's like, yeah, I'm losing hair too. But I mean, I would get out of the shower and if you could see like a ring of hair would be like on my chest. Like I'd be picking off like hair to the point of like, it's scary. Like it's not just a few, it was like noticeable. And then I just had to take FMLA. I had to, because I started having a couple panic attacks. And after that, my husband was like, he called it on me. He goes, I had a panic attack. I came home for lunch and literally bent in half and had a panic attack. And he's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going back to work, as I was kind of trying to collect myself. And he's like, yeah, no, like you're not going back. So it was this like iceberg hit. It wasn't like, I think my body, quite frankly, I've had so much stress in my life that, whether it's the death of a mentor, leading teams, stuff like that, that I think I ignored the signs until my body was like, I don't think so. Like, we're not continuing. And it was really shocking. It was shocking to me. I think it was shocking to my brother. I think it was shocking to my whole family and my friend network, because they're so used to being the ones that were like, either would turn to me or would see me as strong or super independent or whatever. And then all of a sudden I was like not moving. Like I wasn't like doing all the great things that I always had done. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. It was not to be ignored.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you for sharing like all of these symptoms and like the context of like what was going on in your life. And I just want to like slow it down a bit and kind of rewind in terms of you've got all these intense
Mm-hmm.
things going on in your life. And then these symptoms, and I'm assuming it's not like all the symptoms came all at once. It was like over time they kind of built. And so, like, what were you thinking about during that time in terms of like par for the course? I'm a little stressed. Like, what was happening for you? Like, what were you telling yourself um, at that time? Because I think this build, like you say, you talk about it like an iceberg, but actually, right, there was a whole lot, like the ice was building under the water for, I'm assuming, quite some time.
Can you still see me? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I can see
Action
you.
for,
Yeah,
sorry about that.
I can hear
So,
you.
what was happening? So is the question, what was happening before that led up to it? What was I feeling as this?
Yeah, like as you were kind of in this pressure cooker, you had like all these like big life experiences at the same time. Yeah, like what was going on in your head? Like what were you telling yourself? Because I ask in hopes that maybe somebody might also recognize like what they're telling themselves who may be in a similar
So
situation
here's
and
what was
doesn't
happening,
realize it.
that I was completely ignoring it. So people have like, you know, some of them, the addictions are, you know, alcohol, drugs, you know, sex, whatever. My addiction was being busy. And so I kept being busy. So there were signs. So there were signs. Like, so example, like I was project and I started crying in front of my like 10 people. That doesn't happen. And I just like went home for the rest of the day. But it's a sign that my body was like trying to relieve stress. Like it couldn't even coming up. But I was so busy and I just ignored the signs, I guess. So I would tell anyone that if you are having like eruptions of emotion, if you are starting to have physical symptoms, which I did years before, like years, like small and larger examples, I had an eye twitch, you know, like I was like twitching in my eye and like was like, oh, okay, and I just like kind of ignored it. One after my boss, this is a whole other Instagram live, but after my mentor passed away, I was so stressed because I had to take over the team after he passed at 48. So it was super unexpected. I fainted in my kitchen and just was like, oh, okay. I just fainted. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. So I just explained away a lot of the symptoms and just kept on being busy rather than stopping and taking a beat and saying, yeah, maybe this isn't okay. Maybe I need to stop and kind of do something about this, but I didn't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think it's so important to like to say yes, all these little things too that were little signs like in your body and that they were being ignored. I certainly have personal experience with ignoring my own health and body indications. And Deb from Big Life Magic, she says, feeling the stress build up and recognizing how I am a woman who also keeps going.
Yeah.
Reminder, rest, Deb. Yeah, like the build up. And those things, like you said, like we can explain in a way. And so it's like for the audience watching now and after the fact, like what might you be explaining away that actually needs some
And
recognition?
then can I jump in with one other thing dealing with? So I think they're like, we have parts of ourselves, and I'm not talking like multiple personality. You know, I know that's its own struggle. I'm not talking about bipolar. I'm talking about like the angel and the devil, right? So the angel side of me was like screaming at me, like rest, stop, down. But the devil, and I would say the ego side was like, no, you got this. Like I have a super strong developed ego. So it was like, no, you can keep going. No, keep going. And even to this day, like I just faced it this last week, is like, no, you need to slow down. You need to ask for help. You can't do it all by yourself. Like, it's okay to show yourself some compassion rather than like being a bulldozer and trying to keep going. So I think that hopefully people can also see that, those sides of themselves, and be like, wait, let's check in with that deepest part of ourselves. Like, what do I need right now? And if I need rest, like, honor it as soon as possible.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like you didn't give yourself permission to take
No.
any rest or pause with all the things
Yeah.
that you had experienced. Do you have a sense of why that is? Yeah, like is it societal, family, like because I think so many people, it's just so rampant,
I don't think,
everywhere.
can I swear on this podcast? Can I swear? Okay. All right. I was like, okay, I don't want to be like, and then I get bleeped out on Instagram Live. Okay, so I don't think I wanted to handle my own shit. Like, I don't think that I wanted to go there. And I think it was easier staying at the surface level instead of going like, what is the stuff underneath that I have to deal with? And what's interesting is like, you can put that in that like shit in a box for so long, but it does come back. Like, it absolutely comes back to haunt you. And so, yeah, I didn't want to deal with it. So that's why I didn't until I did.
No, thanks for sharing that and just for like honoring that that was the truth, because I think a lot of people do that. They think that like that they can just keep going and keeping those things under the rug without having any implications. That's huge. And Deb says, yeah, self-compassion, boom. Like what that topic in and of itself. Like I guess how do you how do you define self-compassion? Like what does that mean to you? Because this is a big word that is like thrown out there, but I think I'd love to get a little bit granular on it, like to help people really wrap their head around what does it
So
mean to
for
have
me, it
self-compassion?
means like honoring the deepest need within myself and understanding that I'm still a student and I make mistakes, which is so
Mm.
hard for me. So hard for me to admit, like, I'm not going to be perfect. I need to give myself the runway to honor like what I need right now. That's probably the two things.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's such an amazing like explanation just on the spot. Like it's so, and that part about like, oh, I'm human. I make mistakes, and growing up, I think in a world in which especially women have these expectations about being in that perfect space of acceptability, like uh,
Yeah.
and we're gonna get things wrong, like and we're going to mess up and we're going to hurt other people, we're going to hurt ourselves, and so how do we come back to and I know Deb also is helped me understand a lot about self-forgiveness as part of that. And so how do you, yeah, I guess, is self-forgiveness for you part of self-compassion? Is it something
Yeah.
else, like is that part
It's
of your
very
healing
interesting you bring that
journey?
up
And
because when I've gone through and been going through the healing process. So there is another person as a resource that I just fell into that I want everyone to hear. Her name is Kate Donovan, and it's CT Donovan, and she's like a burnout. And
mm,
I think that you also sent her, like, so this is crazy. You sent me her, and someone else like sent me her like in the same week, and I'm like, okay, get the message. I got the message from the universe. Like, it's, oh yeah, I gotta listen. So I think that I'm still trying to learn to forgive myself for allowing myself to get to
mm,
that point. So it's
mm,
still part of the process. And the other thing that I've realized, and I've been listening to her podcast this last week as I'm walking and stuff, and she says that burnout can take like 12 months, like recovery can take 12, 18 months, and even longer. And so I'm in the even longer camp. And I get scared
mm,
because there are times where my stress still gets really high where I'm like, oh crap, where, you can have a repeat burnout. So I thought like once you have it, like, you're done. Like you kind of like
mm,
have the thing and you get the vaccination and you just, no. So according to her podcast, like, yeah, you can get it again. Like, so I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to have this happen to me again. So I'm still learning how to forgive myself that I was doing the best that I could at the time with the tools that I had.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, thanks for sharing that because, yeah, I think each journey is individual, and sometimes even when you say like, even if there's a number out there that's like, oh, on average like 12 to 18 months, but like, but why is it longer? And then we can even beat ourselves up about like what's wrong with me, which none of that serves anybody. But what I do think when we talk about like, the difference between overwhelm and like burnout, right? And that we're not talking about I need a week vacation, I need 2 weeks vacation. So I'd I'd love to hear like, when you first kind of realize, oh, this is like a bigger thing, you took out from LA, like this is like like how are you looking at recovery, like how are you, and the acceptance of it? Maybe we even start with that because it, as you mentioned, and I just want to highlight, it actually took your husband to say you are not going back to work to really acknowledge like that you were in this really bad space that you needed
Yeah.
time
So
to
again, really strong
recover
ego
from.
over here. So, even thinking about forgiveness, the ego even jumps in as we're talking about it, going like, how come you weren't strong enough? How come you weren't strong enough to handle all the stuff you were, supposed to
Mm,
handle? Well, hello, like there's a limit. Like we are humans, not bots, like the last time I checked. So, what I was dealing with, and just, I don't know, like I just either, this is my responsibility where I get myself involved in just a lot of stuff, which I think that, my sister-in-law, my brother, my family can relate to, or, the world is just asking a lot. Some people, it just feels like they have a harder life path. I just feel like I
mm,
got a lot of stuff to do. So there's some of that going on. But going
mm,
back to your question on what was happening, so how did I know? So I didn't know. So ego was saying to go back to work. Husband was saying like absolutely not, which was the most loving thing that he could have done, even though I was super mad about it. I was like, how dare you tell me that I can't go back to work? He's
mm,
like, yeah, no. And then I remember I sat on a couch in my living room, and he knows my supervisor, like not super well, but enough where he could have a conversation. And he's like, I'm going to have a conversation with this person. And I just realized in that moment, like I had to wave the white flag. Like it had to happen.
mm,
And then the other thing, which I
mm,
don't mind sharing, is I went to, which I never thought would happen to me, I went to an outpatient mental health program through a hospital, a local hospital. And I mean, I'm not being flip about
mhm,
this. I mean, it was kind of my girl interrupted moment, because I realized as I was sitting like 5 hours a day learning coping strategies with other people, that there were tons of other people in there. Like there were people of all walks of life. Like you think that, I don't know, and that it was a real gift, because it was like, you think that the stereotypes that you're like, oh, that's just for crazy people. Well, you know what? Like, number one, our world can make us
mm,
crazy because it's so stressful right now. And it's always been stressful, but I mean, think about how stressful it is right now. And I think the other part is it can affect anyone. So for me being in, I think it was like an 8-week program, and I got the time and the space to like learn about all types of, again, behavioral modifications and therapy modalities and all those things, was a blessing, even though it was super humbling, because it was like, what the hell am I doing here? Like I'm supposed to be in a meeting right
mm,
now. So I had to unwind from that for a long time.
mm, mm. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, thank you for sharing that because I think it's important to that we talk about these things that are taboo, or that we think, oh, this isn't for me, or that's, what does that say about me if this is, all that baloney. But at the end of the day, it's like, what do you need? And that your journey is your journey for a reason, and that, all these mechanisms that you had that kept pushing you and kept pushing you, and thank God you had an advocate to say, like, this isn't going to happen, and you surrendered, with having an advocate. And I think that's a beautiful part of the story too, because sometimes we push away the people that are trying
Yeah.
to help us, that are actually trying
Yeah.
to tell us the truth.
Yeah. I mean, he had to like just come to me and
And
get in my face and be like, yeah, you can't keep going. And so I'll also say that I was gone for like 12 weeks. And even after the 12 weeks, I mean, I had to return to protect my job and status of my job. Honestly, I could have gone longer. I mean, that's how tired I was. Like, it just was like almost like where, you know, it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds in levels. And I was so tired that I probably could have taken a year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's you know that's really interesting you say that because you know I work you know with clients who aren't necessarily a burnout. Burnout is not my specialty, but that they realize like that you know they had quit a job or they were let go or what have you, and then they realize, oh my gosh, I just need empty space, and they think like, oh, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then they discover that whatever you know time frame they had in their head is like, no, it's actually more. And I think that's important to highlight because we have to honor what our journey is and like our path and like what we need, and not worry about what does this mean that it's 12 weeks or that it's a year or what have you. And I'm curious as you're like reflecting and looking back, like would you make the same choice to go back and protect your job, or like would you have made a different choice now that you're you know now that you've kind of you know, had the experience of going back and, you know, and I know financially there's all these other factors, but I'm just curious when you look back if you would have done it
I
differently and
probably
given yourself
honestly
more
would have given
time.
myself more time. You know, all things considered, you know, in terms of financials, like if the financials were there and, you know, the responsibilities weren't there. And again, that's my choice. Like I can just X that out. They call it life
Mm,
pruning and prune it right out. But I just
mm,
accepted those responsibilities back. I would have given myself even more time.
mm,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, and I thank you for sharing that because again, I think that, you know, we live in a society where it's like efficiency and, you know, productivity and like is so overvalued as opposed to like just honoring the nothingness and honoring that like, you know, that things take time. Um, and but we don't kind of recognize that it's
Yeah.
okay. Like that's okay,
I can't
you
remember
know.
her name right now.
Um,
Oh, Kate Northrup. Kate Northrup. So, you know, she's
mm,
Christiane Northrup's daughter. She talks about seasons and seasons of the body and seasons in planning. And so, like, look
mm,
outside, you know, and I live in the Chicago area. So right now it's
mm.
summer, but, you know, there's distinct seasons. And so that was my winter season, but no one can tell you how long your winter is.
Mm,
And so I think my winter actually, I mean, I honestly, if I was like, so, okay, I don't care, it's summer right outside. I actually still think I'm in my fall of that process. Like, or I'm in my, maybe not fall, I'm in my spring. So I'm like, I'm still like, I was in winter a very long time, burnout, and I probably needed more
mm.
wintering. Um, I needed more wintering. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love this season analogy too because and we can have such resistance to that. Oh, it's summer. I'm supposed to be this. I'm supposed to be feeling that. And like, yeah, it just may not be the season that you're in.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. Um, yeah, so tell me, so you did an outpatient program. Like, what else was helpful for you in your road to coming
Um,
back from
Lots of
burnout?
alone time for me. So I'm an introvert, so I'm more naturally
Mm-hmm.
inclined introvert. I I've made myself an ambivert. So an ambivert is the ability to become extroverted, but the natural inclination and point of rest is an introversion. So I think lots of time by myself, lots of reflection, lots of rest. I did go to therapy, still have a therapist. So you know, personal therapy. I went on medication, so I'm not going to throw stigma. I mean, I definitely went on medication. Um, yeah, so those were some of the things, you know, just being more mindful, like almost like forming a new relationship with myself. Like it felt like I had betrayed myself or not listened to myself
Mm,
for so long that I had lost kind of that internal compass, like that internal intuition. So I'm still trying to form a relationship with that rather than defaulting to what I need to be doing, kind of almost like what, no, need versus like really need. So I'm still working through that.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that so much. This relationship to self, and I think there's a lot of people that like they lose that and they kind of know, and it's so hard to like I think know how to come back to that, especially without support to uncover like what is mine and what is not mine, like who am I versus like what am I told I should be or
Or
should do.
what is the role
um
you're trying to
and
live up
so
to? Like maybe you created a role for yourself and all of a sudden now you're acting in this
mm,
role and everyone sees you as this person where you're like, wait a minute, do I even really want to be that version of myself anymore, or I want to do something completely different?
yeah, and what comes up for me when you share that is like identity, like what have we
Yeah.
hung our hat on in terms of who we
Yeah.
are. Yeah, because we're so caught up, especially in the work identity. Like this country, like really, I'll just say overvalues like, our work identity, and that's how we're rewarded, and that's what people talk about first in terms of like, oh, what do you do as like the first or second question. Um, and so I'm curious about like how do you see yourself now, like in the midst of coming back, like like who is Jen now? Like what's different about who you are and how you show up in the world versus uh, you know,
So it's interesting.
prior to
So I would
burnout?
say that I'm kind of, I don't know, like I'm kind of living like two lives a little bit. So I'm still in corporate and still
Mm,
in that world, and I still think there's a place there for it. I think that I'm not vilifying corporate. I think tons of people feel good there, but I have this growing need. And you know what? I've talked to my family about this, my friends. Like I just, in 2020. So when all this went down, it went down in 2019, and then in 2020 the pandemic hit. And then for me, it was like this
mm,
huge cocooning. So for me, it aligned perfectly to my winter because I was like, this is when I need to cocoon and heal.
mm,
And I will just say that I have this need to really help women specifically, like avoid burnout, have a career that they love without having to hustle so hard, helping them with mindset, helping them with perfectionism. Like I just, or helping them with just like career stuff, like how do you negotiate, how do you ask for what you want, how do you manage up to your boss even though it's your boss, right? How can you manage up in a really graceful and professional way, and just give them a manual of things that I wish I would have had that I didn't have. Like I just kind of like did it on my own. And
mm,
so I feel really different, although I'm the same most of the time during the day. I have this other part of me that continues to grow with the podcasts that I have, with conversations like this, with,
mm.
and I've got a book coming out that's later this fall that I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if this part is going to overtake me entirely or if it's going to be straddled forever, but I'm kind of in the middle right now. It's a messy answer, I guess.
Mm. No, but it's so beautiful and true, and like I just so appreciate you being honest about it because, when the reason why I have these conversations is because like there's never the other side, right? We're always like in the middle of like where we're trying to get to, and it's a process, and it's not like, it's not always neat and tidy and like, figured it all out. Like we don't figure anything out, like it's just all discovery while we're here on this planet, and and I do want to say too to the folks that that are here live, by all means, like if you have any questions that you want to ask, and Self Love Peddler is here. I'm so excited that you showed up too because we're gonna meet actually in person tomorrow, and um but yeah, like I think we have to be honest about like that, y- you know that there's the facades are not real, right? And that we're constantly going through our own evolution and our own transformation. And I'm curious about yours, about being kind of you talk about these two sides. Like, does it feel like it's in conflict, or does it just feel like I turn down this side of me and turn up this side of me? Like, what is it like to be in this? I'm not fully sure who I'm
So,
showing up as
no,
or
it
how
doesn't
I
feel
want
in
to show up.
conflict. It just feels like different, I don't know, outfits that I put on, like, like my day outfit,
Mm,
my night outfit, right? Like,
mm,
and I'm not saying I'm Superman or Superwoman. I don't even like that analogy, but it's like, Clark Kent had a suit on and, did his thing during the day. And then at night, he was Superman, right? So it feels like that where I kind of swap back
mm,
and forth. And I mean, I was a double foreign language major, so I would go into a French class and then I would go into a Spanish class and then I'd go into a French class. I'd kind of switch back and forth. So, kind of what it feels like. Although
mm,
it's interesting because the language that I'm speaking at night through the work that I do with women is becoming really attractive to me. Um, so it's just interesting, and
mm,
that's the middle. That's the messiness of it all.
mm. That's so beautiful. Oh, let's see what Self-Compassion says. I love you guys talked about the awareness of self and examining who you are showing up as and why. Yeah, and I'm curious, you talk about the language and the work with women, like, does that cross over at all? Do you find yourself processing differently at work? Do you find yourself having different conversations like that? There is
Yeah.
transformation there
So
that looks
since my
different.
burnout and since especially pregnancy losses, IVF, and burnout, so all of those, I think it made me just a much more real person, a much more empathetic person because there's a quote by
Mm,
Plato said like you don't know what other people's struggles are essentially. I kind of like always go into conversations like that a little bit more where I'm like, they're answering me, but like, what's the stuff underneath? Or, how can I show them compassion? So I would say it's not as black and white. It's not as no tolerance. It's just much more,
mm,
yeah, just much more compassion towards what other people are going through.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Um, and how do you feel like that's received? And then it makes me, I asked that question also in context of your work environment, but also what something you said earlier about how your friends and family were like, a little bit like, oh, well, what's happening with Jen? Like, she's the strong one. I go to her. So how, like, how could the external perceptions help or
So in
hinder your
terms of my
healing
work
journey
people,
from
I
this?
think like, because there are some people that follow the podcast and, know that I'm writing a book. And I think they're
Mm,
questioning, like, why am I doing it? Right. And like, what am I doing with it? And the
mm,
answer to everyone listening and watching is, I don't know. Like, I'm just following my heart, right? I don't have some weird ulterior motive. Like, I'm just doing it because it feels good and I feel like I need to do it. So I think there's that at work where people are
mm,
like, why is she taking on more? Or I think maybe here's the other thing that I think my family might, be thinking, or they've even said to me, they're like, are you just using this as another form to be super busy? So you're going to go right into another bout now. And I got to be really careful
mm,
about that. I'll own that. But I also know
mm,
that this is really important for me to be doing. This work that I'm doing with women is like super important. So yes, it keeps me super busy, but it also keeps me fuller and more joyful than I've been in a really long time. So yeah, I think there's that
mm.
balance. And then the other piece is through burnout, I'm still saying no, like no to people. So my phrase, I don't have a word of the year. My phrase of the year is no, thank you. so, so, because I'm
Yeah,
always like,
yes.
yeah, I can do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I just keep piling on myself to the point of a complete exhaustion. So I think people are starting to be a little weirded out by me saying, yeah, no, I can't do that. Or no, I can't help you right now. Or no, just, I
Mm,
had a dear friend who was like, really all over me. She's going through the job search for the first time in like 20 plus years. And she's super nervous and she was calling me all hours of the day. And I just said, I love you, but I don't have the bandwidth right now. Like I can help you from afar
mm.
and root you on, but I need to take breaks or this is going to break me. And so I think saying no is becoming really important.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you brought this up because yeah, this idea of boundaries um and you know knowing the difference between what are you doing that's filling you up, that is that's also taking your energy versus like, what are you doing that's like actually super draining your energy and it's not filling you up? And so I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your work with boundaries and the saying no in order to move forward in a more healthy way with, what you are
Yeah.
saying
So
yes to.
yeah, it's really hard for
Is
me.
it?
I'm gonna just flat out call myself out. It's super hard for me. And so I just had someone recently ask me, I mean, simple stuff, really simple. And she was so loving on the response. But I was asked to breakfast the other day, and someone asked me, and they asked me, followed up and responded because I was delaying because I didn't want to say no. And then she was like, hey, are you gonna come? And I just was so tired from the weekend that I was just like, I can't, no. And she was so great. She was like, good for you for standing up and saying no, because she knows it's a struggle for me. So that felt good. But to be honest, and I've told people this. So when I say no right now, I get a physical response. So what I mean by this is I actually feel like I'm gonna get sick, like I'm gonna throw up, like when I'm about to say no, because it's so underdeveloped for me and it's so just. And then after I get that sick feeling, I kind of have that for a little bit, but then after that, I feel really good and super proud of myself. So I know that I'm going to get better with it as I keep practicing. And one other example, is recently my family, we were going to have a Mother's Day celebration. And I asked my family, I said, hey, are we going to get together? And, we just, schedules were just conflicting. So I'm like, okay, no, we're not going to get together. And it was interesting because, there was some tension with my family because, things weren't coming together the way they typically do. And it's because, I typically try to like get everyone together and keep going and keep doing it and get everyone's like, and I'm just like, I just didn't do it. I didn't do it that time. And it didn't turn out so well. And, but I have to be okay with that because I can't do everything. I just can't do it all. And I'm training people that by me saying no, like I'm also taking care of myself. I'm taking care of my needs, right? So it's still super hard. I still feel sick when I say no.
Well, there's a couple things in that. Again, first of all, thank you for the honesty because it like it is a journey and it's probably something you'll never be like 100% like comfortable with. It's probably like one of those like lifelong things that, that we have to learn. But I think what I'm pulling from a lot of this conversation is how important the body has been in helping you, in
Yeah.
serving you as information. And I'm not sure if you've seen it that way, like if your relationship even with your body, like, or your attunement with listening to your body,
Yes.
how has that changed? Has that,
So,
yeah, I'd
and
love
I
to hear
wrote
more
this in a
about that.
chapter that's coming out in the book. So this is a spoiler. Like this is my chapter because it was part of my healing, right? So I wanted to write the story. But one of the things that really came up, so burnout is really a tricky thing because it almost feels that this is my visual, is that you're driving your car, right? And I'm driving my car super fast because I'm keeping busy, busy, busy. But I have a complete blind spot in front of me. I don't see that I'm literally about to hit a wall. And so with my analogy for burnout is I literally hit a wall that I could not see. So now when I'm getting closer, it's interesting. I asked Kate Donovan this because I was on a call with her with another group. And I asked her, I'm like, is your resistance lower after you've hit once in burnout? She said, yes, as a matter of fact, it is a little lower. So the beautiful thing through this is that my body will tell me. So like, I feel I don't know, it almost feels like it fills up. So like I can feel the anxiety, I can feel the stress, I can feel the overwhelm. And I can feel like as I get closer to that like metaphorical wall. And so now I'm like, yeah, no, not going back. No, hell no. And so that's basically what my body does for me. It's like almost a thermometer. And when it gets too hot, I'm like, I have to back down now.
Yeah, I mean, that's so great to hear that it's like you're hearing it, you're listening to it, you're acting on it. And I think that for everybody listening, now and after the fact, it's like our bodies tell us before our mind in terms of what's happening. And so it can be a great indicator, of what do I have to pay attention to? What am I missing out on? Um, and and I think we undervalue it as information because we're always like living in our head. Um, there's something else that you had mentioned, but now it's escaping me, unfortunately. Um, but I do want to ask more about um, your book, like what's that been like for you? Again, another big project. I can't even imagine. And how has that been kind of part of your healing process? I'm assuming there's a lot of reflection and and maybe even bringing up things that are hard to look at again. Like, so how has that been maybe helpful, and maybe I don't know if there's been a downside to having to kind of relive what that journey has been
So,
like for you in
couple
service of
things. Number
others.
one, I just hear, because I've been meditating also. I forgot to mention that. So meditation has been a huge piece of my journey. Been
Mm.
meditating now for like 2.5 years. And some days, I'll be honest, like I suck at it. Like I just like, I'm not good at it. I just like barely like touch the surface, right? But you know what? It counts. Like if it's 5 minutes, it counts, and I'm showing up for myself. So
Mm.
I meditate almost every day. I try to. And one of the things that came up as I'm building my intuition again and that trust in myself is something just like, you got to write a book. Like you got to write a book. Like that's just it. And so, I interview a
Mm.
lot of women, powerful women for my podcast. And one of the women I interviewed, her name is Hope Mueller, and she's my co-author and my publisher. And her publishing firm is Hunter Street Press. And I asked her completely, I did not know that she had a publishing firm. I did not know. And I just like heard the voice go, ask her, ask her. And I asked her and I said, hey, I just got this thing. Like, I have to ask you, like, I want to write a book. Like, and here's my pitch in like 30 seconds. Like, here's what I want to do. And so the book is called Brave Women at Work, which is the name of my podcast, and the subtitle is Stories of Resilience. And I said, I really want to do a collaboration book with other women and share their stories of strength and resilience. And she kind of took it in, and then my inner critic was like, she goes, say no, right? And so we got off the phone, and then we had another conversation post it was our pre-call, like my preparatory call like we had before this. And I got on the podcast call with her. We recorded the podcast, and I didn't even have to ask her about it. She's like, I've been really thinking about this book. And I'm like, okay. She's like, yeah, let's do it. Just like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, seriously? Thinking like she was just going to say no. And she's like, no, let's do it. So she's been amazing in guiding me through the process.
Mm.
This is like her fourth or fifth book. She has two biographical novels, and then she has a journal she's created. I think this might be her fourth. And so we're writing it under Hunter Street Press, and she's really navigating through the process. And it's been hard, but it's been amazing. And to I guess the piece that I should give credit is to the universe itself, because she's like, well, you got it. Part of my role in this book was to recruit people to be contributing authors. And honestly, I knew none of them. I knew none of them. It wasn't like I called a family member. It's like, hey, you want a chapter in the book? No, I mean, I found like the 9 or 10 authors to be part of this book, like completely out of the clear blue sky. So I just prayed on it, and I was like, all right, God, like, okay, universe, like, let's go. Let's do this. And held a couple webinars and held a couple of conversations, and like all of the women that were supposed to be coming through with this first anthology came right through and have been really great. And so yeah. And to answer your final question about the story, has it been difficult? Not really. So one of the things that's so weird about me, I guess it's one of my little quirks, is that I'm just a really straight shooter. I just don't think there's enough time to not be. So if it's going to help someone, then so be it. Let's do it. Let's go.
Wow, I love what you just shared about, which goes back to our earlier conversation about this belief that things have to be hard and we have to drive, and what you just described by listening to your intuition, listening to this voice that's saying, like, ask her about a book, or that, that this is something you need to do. And then it was so easeful. And it was like, it just sounds like the universe kind of like, here it is, like on a platter. And it wasn't like, oh, going
No,
upstream to like find the
no.
9 people. It was just like,
Yeah.
it's like that's the different way, right? Like that's the different way that we don't talk about in terms of manifesting and making things reality without
Yeah,
it
no, it was
being this
super,
slog.
super, I don't want to say super easy. I mean, were there days I was like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. Yeah. I like woke up and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. I mean, I had many women decline me and say, yeah, I can't, because there's cost to publishing. Like, this is a endeavor. So, there's cost to publishing. They either couldn't afford it or they didn't feel it was the right time in their business. And I so respect that. I'm like, and for every no, I'm like, okay, we can get a yes. And then eventually we had enough yeses, and there you go.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So we're coming to the top of the hour, and like the question that I have for you is like what are your desires right now in your life? What are those things you're putting out there that you
Okay,
want to
so I'm putting
manifest
them out here.
now?
Okay, so here we So I want to
Yes.
be a TEDx speaker in the next 2 years. Yeah, I'm gonna walk the stage. I'm putting it out there, right? I'm gonna do it. And why I do it, I got to be careful with me, that it's not just something to check off the list. It's really not. It's because I really, really just want to do it. I really want to scare the absolute hell out of myself by doing this, but I also want to share the story and give back to people, quite frankly. And I just, two other things. I want to, this is not a SMART goal. I'm just going to put out like what is on my heart is like, I just want to keep growing and reaching more women. Like, I just want to do that, whether that's in my Facebook community or whether that's coaching women, whether that's in groups or membership or whatever. And I'm getting this sense, like I'm getting this nudge that, yes, I'm going to have some sort of group or membership or something where I'm going to be building a community. So there's that. And I think the last thing is continuing to share the journey with my 2 daughters is so important to me. Like, giving them the tools that maybe I didn't have. So like I just took my daughter to meditation class, and she's 10 and she's like, this is weird. And I'm like, okay. So, when she's ready, she'll pick it up. And maybe it's not right now, but she'll always know that I gave her another tool in the toolbox. So I think it's not just being a good mom. It's like about really raising powerful women. That's very important to me. So that's what I'm manifesting.
That is so beautiful, and I love that you have them at the top of your tongue. I'm just like, yes, that's so beautiful. And like, for those who maybe want to be in touch, I know that you do some coaching and you clearly have your podcast. For anybody who wants to get in touch for any of the above, or who want to be on the list to get the book as soon as it gets launched,
yeah, sure.
What's
so
the best way for them to
my
get in touch with
website
you?
is Brave Women at Work. So bravewomenatwork.com. And then you can go and get my freebie there to get on my email list. And then I will let you know when the book is going to be coming out in October of this year. So I'm really excited. And then we're going to have a virtual summit with all the authors. I think it's going to be in September. I'm working with a wonderful woman to help me with that because I can't do it all myself. We got to ask for help. So we're going to have a virtual summit with the authors. So be on the lookout for that. And then, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn under Jen Pestikas, which you can put in the notes. And I also have Brave Women at Work, the business out there on LinkedIn as well. So those are the places you can find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, for your transparency, for really honoring, like, to share that messy middle with people so they can see themselves. I just can't express enough how much I appreciate your vulnerability, your sharing your journey. And I know that you will be helping more than just one person on this call, which I know is what you said. If you just do that, but you far exceeded those expectations already, I know. And so I guess in closing, I'll just ask, is there anything that you feel like you just want to either reiterate or something we didn't talk about that you feel is really
I would
important that
just
people know?
say to be you, right? So people say the cliche like do you, but I would say, be you, and that you're enough exactly as you are. There were so many years I contorted myself to fit in, or, to be one of the guys, or, to try to be something I really wasn't. I would just say it's not worth it. Like, just be yourself, because that's awesome. And that's enough.
That's a beautiful way to end. Those are beautiful sentiments to end on. Thank you so much, Jen. And I look forward to getting your book and to seeing your community. I have no doubt that's happening, and your TEDx talk for sure. So yeah, I look forward to being in touch, and thank you so much for the work that you're doing to help other women in
No,
avoiding
thank
the
you for
same
the invite. It was so
situation.
fun to talk with you today.
Likewise. All right, well, have a great rest of May, and I hope you have a wonderful start
Thank
to
you.
June. That goes to you and everybody watching.
Bye.
So, ciao for now. Bye.